Welcome to Tomorrow Unveiled, where we pull back the curtain on the future being built today. If you're like us, you constantly hear terms like immortality thrown around, often creating unnecessary, sensationalism.
It really does. It conjures up images of, vampires or something mythical.
Exactly. But our mission on Tomorrow Unveiled, and specifically in this deep dive into the latest breakthroughs, which we are calling the Immortality Update, is to move past that mythological pursuit of endless life. Instead, we want to focus on the very real functional advancements in extending our health span.
That is the absolute key distinction, and it's one you really need to carry with you throughout this discussion. We are not interested in simply extending frail old age, characterized by chronic disease and declining mobility.
But who wants that?
Right. We are laser focused on preserving the vitality, the cognitive function, and the physical strength of youth for as long as humanly possible. The goal of all these therapies we'll talk about is to ensure added, active, high-quality years, not just added time spent managing symptoms.
Precisely. We have compiled a stack of cross-corroborated sources from just the past week. It's really a global snapshot of longevity science breakthroughs. Our deep dive today is designed to clearly distinguish between, early stage laboratory promise, which is often captivating, but maybe years away,
Very captivating, but yes, often distant.
and the interventions that are already moving decisively into human trials. That's where the real paradigm shift begins, I think.
And this rapid evolution in longevity therapeutics is anchored in what we call the core philosophy of geroscience. What is fundamentally fascinating here is the realization, proven time and again in the data our team compiled, that aging isn't just a separate process ticking along in the background. Aging is the single greatest risk factor for virtually every chronic, debilitating disease that threatens us. That's cancer, heart disease, neurodegeneration, even severe infectious disease outcomes.
And it's quite a staggering thought. If aging truly is the root cause, then treating aging itself, addressing those fundamental biological hallmarks, is the most efficient and powerful way to prevent the entire cascade of diseases that follow.
Exactly. It's a systemic fix rather than the traditional medical approach of, managing symptoms one by one as they pop up.
The research team that compiled this information highlighted a stunning statistic I wanted to share. If we cured all forms of cancer tomorrow,
Which would be incredible, of course.
absolutely, but the average human lifespan would only increase by approximately 3 years. Just 3. Because the underlying aging process remains untreated.
And that number is massive in its implications. That 3-year gain is, frankly, tiny. Because once you hypothetically cure cancer, that same patient still faces the high probability of developing catastrophic cardiovascular disease or Alzheimer's shortly thereafter.
Why?
Simply because their underlying biological age remains high. If we target aging itself, the potential health span gain isn't just additive, it's theoretically exponential.
That sets the stage perfectly for what we're diving into. The source material we reviewed this week is really consistent and quite powerful, confirming 3 major themes that are shaping the longevity landscape right now.
First, that crucial shift you mentioned, away from just general lifespan extension toward functional longevity. Improving the quality of those years. This involves specifically targeting there are about 10 or so core biological hallmarks of aging. Things everyone's heard of, perhaps, like genomic instability, mitochondrial dysfunction, or the accumulation of senescent cells.
Those are the infamous zombie cells, right?
That's the popular term, yes. Because they refuse to die, but also refuse to work properly, and they just spew out inflammatory signals.
Okay, so that's theme 1, functional longevity via hallmarks.
Second, we see this incredible rapid acceleration of discovery. It's undeniable. And this speed is driven almost entirely by new enabling technologies.
Like what?
Specifically, artificial intelligence platforms for crunching massive data sets and highly precise biomarkers that can actually measure biological age reversal in months rather than waiting decades for lifespan data.
That measurement piece feels critical for speeding things up.
It is. And the third theme, which frankly must guide all the scientific development, is the critical societal challenge of preventing a genuine health span versus wealth span dilemma.
Meaning
Meaning the issue of access, cost, and equity. If these powerful, potentially life-altering therapies only reach the very wealthy, we risk creating a sort of biological caste system.
which would have massive ethical and economic implications, obviously.
Huge. So that needs to be front and center.
That's the high-level roadmap we'll follow. So let's unpack these breakthroughs, starting with what's perhaps more accessible now or very soon. Lifestyle mimetics and targeted supplements that are already showing some powerful results in humans. Okay, segment 1 is dedicated to what our sources are calling accessible health span gains. And we're starting with one of the most intriguing concepts in geroscience right now, the exercise in a pill.
It sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But the idea of successfully translating the profound systemic benefits of intense physical activity into an oral compound is, well, truly groundbreaking if it pans out.
Why is that so important?
Well, think about it. For those who, due to physical disability, severe frailty, or chronic illness, simply cannot participate in strenuous exercise, and that's a large population, this represents a crucial bridge to better health.
Right. Our dedicated research team highlighted recent findings that identified the kidney, actually, surprisingly, as a key command center during exercise.
The kidney, not muscles or the heart.
Apparently, the kidney releases a specific metabolite called betaine during physical activity, and researchers found this metabolite then coordinates anti-aging signals throughout the entire body.
So it acts as the molecular messenger for exercise, carrying the benefits system-wide.
That seems to be the idea.
And the preclinical results, as reported in our compiled sources, were quite remarkable. When old mice were given betaine, it successfully reproduced many of the rejuvenating effects we typically associate with intense endurance exercise.
Like what specifically?
While we saw significant, measurable improvements in metabolism, better coordination, which is key for preventing falls, enhanced cognitive function, and a systemic slowdown of cellular aging across key systems, the vascular network, immune cells, and even the kidney itself.
So how is this working at the cellular level? This is where the mechanistic detail gets important, I think. Our sources indicate that betaine works by inhibiting a key inflammation regulator called TBK1.
Okay, TBK1, that's absolutely critical, and we probably need to unpack what TBK1 is for listeners.
Please do.
Right. TBK1 stands for tank-binding kinase 1. You can think of it like the ignition switch for that chronic, low-grade, simmering inflammation that geroscience calls inflammaging.
Inflammaging, I like that term.
It captures it well. It's this quiet storm that drives nearly all age-related disease, from atherosclerosis in your arteries to arthritis in your joints. By blocking TBK1, betaine essentially mimics one of exercise's major benefits, dampening that systemic inflammatory baseline.
So, for a listener, this means betaine holds significant promise as an accessible, perhaps readily available supplement in the future.
Potentially, yes.
It could provide the core anti-inflammatory and metabolic benefits of exercise to those with physical limitations, allowing them to fight inflammaging without the physical strain on joints or the cardiovascular system.
Precisely. It's potentially an effective way to improve cellular health in the population that needs it most, regardless of their current mobility status. It's very exciting.
Okay, moving from preclinical studies in mice to actual human data, we have some really exciting news regarding immune rejuvenation. This specifically involves a nutritional supplement derived from pomegranates, Urolithin A.
Yes. This is compelling stuff because it provides measurable, short-term rejuvenation effects in middle-aged humans. That's exactly what we look for in a promising geroprotector, something that shows effects, and quickly, in people.
And this was a proper trial.
Yes. A randomized, placebo-controlled human trial involving participants around 50 years old. A short-term regimen of this compound led to systemic immune benefits that were clearly distinguishable from the placebo group.
Let's look at the markers, because they were, frankly, deeply impressive, according to the reports. The treated group saw a significant increase in naive CD8 plus T cells.
Right, and let's clarify those. These are the fresh, newly minted T cells that are critical for fighting novel infections, like new viruses or bacteria your body hasn't seen before.
And those typically decline with age?
They decline dramatically as we age. It's a key part of what we call immunosenescence, or immune aging. Seeing them increase is a big deal.
But it wasn't just the quantity, was it?
No, and this is important. Not only did the quantity of those crucial cells increase, but their quality improved too. The research also demonstrated enhanced mitochondrial function within these T cells.
Meaning their cellular energy factories were more robust.
Exactly. Performing more like those found in much younger immune cells. They were more energetic, more ready to respond.
Okay, if Urolithin A comes from pomegranates, this raises an obvious question for the listener. Why can't we just, drink a glass of pomegranate juice every day? Is the supplement actually necessary?
That's a fantastic probing question, and the research team that compiled this information addressed it directly. It's a common one.
So what's the answer?
The benefit isn't directly from the fruit itself. It's from urolithin A, which is a metabolite produced when certain components of the pomegranate elagitannins specifically are broken down by specific bacteria residing in your gut microbiome.
Ah, so it depends on your gut bugs.
Precisely. And the research suggests that about 60% of people actually lack the necessary gut flora to produce urolithin A in sufficient therapeutic amounts, even if they eat pomegranates.
60%, that's a lot.
It is. So the supplement effectively bypasses that microbial dependency, ensuring everyone gets the required standardized dose to potentially see the benefits.
That makes perfect sense. And critically, inflammatory markers drop significantly in the human trial, specifically IL-6, TNF-alpha, and IL-1 beta.
Right, let's quickly translate those for the listener. These are powerful pro-inflammatory chemical messengers. They're called cytokines that act like the fire alarms of your immune system.
Okay.
When they're constantly elevated, which often happens with age, they drive that constant simmering inflammation we called inflammaging. Urolithin A appears to work, at least in part, by inducing mitophagy, that's the cellular cleaning process that removes damaged mitochondria. By cleaning up the mitochondria, it effectively silences these persistent inflammatory fire alarms.
And the result?
Measurable immune rejuvenation in just a matter of weeks in this trial.
Wow. That is measurable evidence, showing an accessible compound can reverse aspects of immune aging so quickly in humans. It speaks directly to the goal of improving the functional competence of the immune system, so that, say, a 70-year-old's body can handle an infection or respond to a vaccine with the vigor of maybe a 50-year-old's.
That's the hope, yes. Enhancing immune resilience is a core part of Healthspan.
Before we get too carried away with pills and supplements, though, our research pile strongly reinforced the baseline importance of pure lifestyle intervention. We shouldn't forget that.
Absolutely not. Foundational health habits are key. There was a large-scale, decade-long study from Japan that provided really compelling epidemiological data that grounds us back in reality.
Yes, that large-scale study confirmed, over 10 years of observation, that regular cycling significantly extends health span and drastically lowers the risk of disability in seniors.
And notably, even people who started cycling later in life saw functional benefits. It's a foundational reminder that simple, accessible physical activity remains the non-negotiable cornerstone of longevity. You can't supplement your way out of a bad lifestyle entirely.
True, but the field is also rapidly bridging the gap between that non-negotiable cornerstone and the needs of the frail. They're creating non-drug physical mimetics.
Exactly. We're seeing novel therapeutic approaches designed to safely deliver those exercise benefits to patients who are mobility limited.
That brings us to the fascinating concept of magnetic mitohormesis. Sounds very futuristic.
It does. This non-drug approach uses pulsed electromagnetic fields, or PEMF, to mimic the effects of endurance exercise at a cellular level, particularly targeting the mitochondria in muscles.
So how does that work? It's not like lifting weights.
No, think of it more as a low-impact, localized, technological workout for your cells. The sources detail a small human trial of older adults who had type 2 diabetes and central obesity, so a population really at risk.
And the findings?
Well, first off, a short-term regimen using this magnetic field device was found to be incredibly safe, reporting 0 side effects. That's crucial.
That's number one.
Absolutely. And the metabolic results were encouraging. In the subset of participants with central obesity, nearly 90% showed improved glucose control and reductions in HbA1c.
And HbA1c is that standard measure of average blood sugar levels over time.
Correct. It's a key marker for diabetes management. This PEMF treatment effectively stimulated the muscle cells' mitochondria, mimicking the cellular stress response, or hormesis, of endurance exercise.
But without the physical strain.
Exactly. Without putting any physical strain on the patient's joints or heart. For the frail, the mobility limited, or maybe those post-surgery, this could offer a crucial low-strain therapeutic option to maintain or improve metabolic health. It could significantly reduce diabetes risk and extend functional years.
Yeah, if you have a loved one who struggles to exercise due to chronic pain or severe frailty, this is the kind of non-invasive technology that promises to maintain their metabolic health without physical strain. It's a tangible example of extending functional years for those who really need it most.
Precisely. It targets a specific need.
And just a quick reminder here, if you're listening on a podcast service like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could leave us a rating and review for Tomorrow Unveiled. It truly helps us reach new listeners and keeps us digging deeper into these complex topics.
Okay, so moving from those more accessible supplements and simple mimetics, let's transition now to the high-tech frontiers. This is where things get really cutting edge. We're talking about cellular and gene therapies that are rapidly progressing through clinical trials. While definitely more complex and, at least currently, more expensive, this is where the long-term, really dramatic rewrites of the aging process will likely originate.
Right, the potentially bigger leaps. We start with cellular therapy, specifically Senolytics. Just a quick reminder for everyone. The goal of Senolytics is to clear out those senescent cells.
The zombie cells.
Yes, those zombie cells that stop dividing but stick around, refusing to die, and constantly driving chronic aging and inflammation throughout the body.
And the crucial development here isn't just the concept. It's the movement from theoretical lab mechanism to actual clinical feasibility in humans. Our compiled sources highlighted a pilot human trial using a well-known first-generation senolytic combination, dasatinib, which is a cancer drug, and quercetin, a plant flavonoid, D plus Q.
And who are they testing this on?
It was administered intermittently, not continuously, to older adults who were at risk for Alzheimer's, specifically those with mild cognitive impairment and also slow gait, which is another marker of frailty.
And the key finding, was it effective?
Well, the primary finding in this pilot study was primarily safety and mechanism confirmation. The intermittent regimen was deemed safe and well tolerated, with no serious adverse effects reported over the 12-week intervention. That's a big hurdle cleared.
Okay, safety first.
Absolutely. And crucially, the treatment did reduce specific inflammatory markers in the participants' blood. So it successfully validated that clearing senescent cells, or at least impacting them, is both feasible and safe in this human population, and it does lower inflammation.
So this sets the stage for much larger trials now.
Exactly. Scientists can now move forward with more confidence to confirm if reducing this inflammatory burden actually slows, stops, or maybe even reverses functional decline in neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. That's the next big question.
But the future of Senolytics is getting much smarter, right? Moving beyond these relatively broad, small molecules like D plus Q to next-generation approaches.
Yes, the field is evolving rapidly. This demonstrates the remarkable precision that next-generation cell therapies are aiming for. Our sources discuss the potential of highly sophisticated technologies like ESMA platforms,
ESMA.
enhanced senescence monitoring and assessment. These platforms help identify unique markers on senescent cells, and that knowledge could eventually lead to engineered cell therapies known as CAR-S senolytic cells.
CAR-S, like CAR-IS for cancer.
Exactly the same principle. Think of this as the ultimate personalized medicine approach to clearing these problem cells. We know about CAR-T cells, which are engineered immune cells used in cancer treatment to precisely target tumor cells.
Right, they've been revolutionary for some cancers.
They have. A CAR-S cell would operate on the same principle, but instead of targeting cancer, it would be engineered as a kind of smart missile to precisely hunt and kill senescent cells based on specific markers they display.
How does that smart missile know what to target? Because you mentioned the first-gen drugs, like D plus Q, often have off-target effects because they aren't perfectly specific.
That's precisely the problem CAR-S technology aims to solve. Senescent cells display a unique protein flag, or sometimes multiple flags, on their surface, a molecular signature that healthy, functioning cells generally lack. A CAR cell would be a live engineered cell therapy program to recognize only that unique protein flag or combination of flags. Once it finds a cell displaying that signature, it engages and eliminates it.
So it's much more targeted.
Potentially, yes. This level of precision could avoid off-target toxicity, making the clearance process incredibly clean and efficient compared to broader-acting drugs. It's still developmental, but very exciting.
Okay, now turning to another major cellular therapy platform, mesenchymal stem cells, or MSCs, specifically the therapy known as larlomestrocel. This therapy is showing substantial corroborated results in two major areas of age-related functional decline, severe frailty and Alzheimer's disease. That sounds significant.
It is. Let's start with aging-related frailty, or AF. The sources confirm a completed Phase 2b trial involving older adults, average age around 70 to 85, who already had evidence of chronic inflammation and impaired mobility. These were frail individuals.
Frailty is a really high-risk state, isn't it? Defined by that decline in physiological reserve and function across multiple systems, it leads to a high risk of really bad outcomes like falls, hospitalization, even death.
It absolutely is. And the primary measure of efficacy in this frailty trial was the 6-minute walk test, or 6-MWT. For listeners, why is that specific metric so critical for objectively defining physical function?
Well, it's considered an objective, gold standard measure of physical endurance and mobility that directly correlates to independence in daily life. Can you walk from the parking lot into the grocery store entrance without stopping? Can you quickly move out of harm's way if needed? These are functional requirements for autonomy.
Exactly. And the results here were incredibly positive, according to the reports. A single infusion of larmestrocel led to a statistically significant and functionally meaningful increase in the distance participants could walk in 6 minutes compared to the placebo group.
A single infusion.
Yes. And the source material noted that this effect was evident and persistent 9 months after that single infusion, suggesting the treatment sends a persistent regenerative signal. It's not just a temporary boost.
But how does an infusion of stem cells actually help you walk further? They aren't becoming new muscle cells themselves, are they? That's a common thought.
That's the common misconception, yeah. Mesenchymal stem cells, MSCs, primarily work through a process called paracrine signaling. They don't typically engraft long-term and replace damaged tissue directly.
So what do?
They act more like mobile pharmacy delivery systems. When infused, they have this amazing ability to seek out areas of inflammation and damage in the body. And once they get there, they start releasing a complex cocktail of beneficial molecules, anti-inflammatory factors, growth factors, immune modulators.
So they're essentially ordering the body's own repair mechanisms to wake up, calm down the inflammation, and start cleaning up the mess.
That's a great way to put it. They dramatically reduce the baseline inflammation we talked about,
Yep.
and encourage the body's own tissue repair processes. That restoration of balance is what likely leads to improved physical endurance and mobility.
That's a massive win for Healthspan, directly impacting the patient's independence and quality of life. Huge.
It really is. Now, the same cellular therapy, larmestrocel, is showing phenomenal promise in Alzheimer's disease, AD.
Right, the Phase 2A results, known as the Clear Mind trial, were certainly encouraging enough to accelerate regulatory approval pathways.
They were, very much so. The therapy secured 2 critical regulatory designations from the FDA, Regenerative Medicine Advanced Therapy, or RMAT, and Fast Track status.
Listeners should understand what that means, practically speaking.
Right. RMAT is basically the FDA signaling that this therapy is highly promising and addresses a serious unmet medical need, which Alzheimer's certainly is. Fast Track ensures accelerated review timelines and more frequent communication with the FDA, essentially clarifying and potentially speeding up its regulatory path towards approval.
Okay, and looking at the clinical data from that trial, the administration of the therapy was associated with slowing cognitive and functional decline compared to placebo.
Yes, showing statistically significant improvements in key measures of daily functioning and cognitive acuity. But perhaps the most compelling piece of evidence, according to our sources, came from the biomarker data, specifically the brain imaging.
What did the MRIs show?
Absolute stunning results, frankly. The MRI data demonstrated a 49% reduction in the rate of brain volume loss, or brain atrophy, compared to the placebo group over the course of the trial.
Nearly half the rate of brain shrinkage.
Yes. Brain atrophy, that shrinkage, is a key structural consequence of the inflammation and pathology in Alzheimer's disease. Seeing such a marked reduction is highly significant.
And while, of course, Phase 2A results need to be confirmed in much larger trials, that's always the caveat.
Always.
That 49% reduction in atrophy is a structurally significant biomarker. It suggests we're potentially altering the actual course of the disease, not just managing symptoms like current drugs mostly do.
That's the interpretation, yes. It appears that by targeting the central nervous system inflammation, larmestrocel might be preserving brain structure and function. It's moving beyond the traditional and, frankly, often unsuccessful approach of targeting only amyloid plaques, which hasn't yielded the results we hoped for.
And the regulatory implications, as confirmed by our sources, are massive because of this.
Yes. Based on these impressive results, the FDA and the researchers have aligned on a plan for a single, pivotal Phase 23 trial.
What does single pivotal mean?
It means they are potentially moving towards seeking marketing approval based on the results of this next large-scale trial, assuming it's positive. This could cut years off the typical drug development timeline. It's a sign of strong confidence from the regulators, based on the data so far.
Okay, before we leave cellular therapies, we should quickly touch on a manufacturing breakthrough that was highlighted. It's around extracellular vesicles, or EVs.
Yes, this is what we call cell-free regeneration, and it tackles a major scaling problem for cell therapies.
How so?
Well, stem cells, like MSCs, communicate many of their beneficial anti-aging signals through these tiny packets, or vesicles, the EVs. They release them like little messages. By figuring out a scalable, clinical-grade process to manufacture these EVs outside the body, scientists can potentially deliver the beneficial signals, things like reducing senescence markers, improving collagen production in skin models, without the intense logistical challenge of shipping and handling live, fragile cells.
Keeping live cells viable during transport and storage is complex and expensive.
Extremely. EVs are more stable. This standardization is crucial for ensuring that regenerative medicine can eventually be mass-produced and distributed globally. It unlocks a potentially highly scalable path for cell-free regenerative therapies to combat inflammation and frailty in the elderly worldwide.
Makes sense. More stable, easier to ship and use.
Exactly. Finally, in this high-tech section, let's look at targeted gene therapies that are on the horizon. These are still relatively early stage clinically, but have clear, high-impact human targets. First, neuroprotection, focusing on the Clotho longevity protein.
Clotho. That name comes up a lot in longevity circles. It's a protein long associated with longevity and health span in multiple species, right?
It is. The program highlighted, KLTO202, is an AAV gene therapy. AAV is a common, relatively safe viral vector used to deliver genes. In this case, it delivers the Clotho gene directly to the nervous system.
And rather than testing it on generally healthy people initially, they are targeting amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS.
Yes, ALS is this catastrophic, fatal neurodegenerative disease often described by doctors as a form of accelerated aging, specifically affecting the motor neurons.
So they're tackling ALS as a proving ground.
That seems to be the strategy. The explicit goal is to use Clotho's known protective effects to shield those vulnerable motor neurons and preserve motor function in ALS patients. A therapy that could arrest functional decline in a fatal neurodegenerative disease like ALS would be the purest form of health span intervention imaginable.
And the timeline.
The program is aiming for entry into clinical trials by 2026. If it shows efficacy in ALS, the door potentially opens wide for applying it to more common forms of aging-related neurodegeneration later on.
Very interesting strategy. And we also saw progress in heart regeneration, a field that has historically been, well, stymied by basic biology.
Absolutely. Our research team detailed a significant breakthrough where researchers successfully reactivated a dormant gene called Cyclin A2 or CCNA2.
Why is that significant?
Well, it's a profound finding because adult heart muscle cells, cardiomyocytes, typically stop dividing shortly after birth. They lose that ability to replicate.
Right, and that lack of division capacity is why when someone suffers a heart attack, the damaged area doesn't regrow healthy muscle. It forms permanent, non-functional scar tissue.
Exactly. And because heart failure, driven by that scarring, is a major cause of mortality and frailty in the elderly, this inability of the heart to regenerate has been the single biggest hurdle in cardiovascular regenerative medicine.
So what did reactivating Cyclin A2 do?
Researchers found that reactivating this dormant gene actually stimulated cell division and regeneration in adult human heart muscle cells in the lab.
In human cells, not just mice.
In human cells, yes. In fact, they show that even in middle-aged donor hearts, the treatment effectively turned back the cellular clock for these cardiomyocytes, proving that the regenerative machinery is still present, just silenced by default in adults.
Wow, so this paves the way for a potential gene therapy.
That's the clear implication. A gene therapy that could literally repair and strengthen heart muscle after injury or during heart failure, addressing one of the most significant age-related causes of death and disability. A truly regenerative approach.
Incredible potential there. Okay, for our listeners on YouTube, if you're finding this insightful, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Tomorrow Unveiled, and maybe consider hitting that new hype button to help us reach more viewers. And of course, be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the future. The sheer pace of scientific discovery we just detailed, moving from supplements to stem cells to gene therapy breakthroughs seemingly all at once, it's staggering.
It really is. The field is moving incredibly fast.
And the speed is only possible, it seems, because the technological toolkit for measurement and analysis has matured so significantly in recent years. Let's pivot and discuss the two major types of tools accelerating the entire field based on our sources.
Right. The first tool is, almost inevitably these days, AI, artificial intelligence being used in the lab and increasingly potentially in the clinic. Longevity science generates just absolutely massive amounts of complex data. We're talking multiomics data, that's genomics, your DNA sequence, proteomics, all the proteins your cells are making, metabolomics, the small molecules like betaine we discussed, epigenomics, like methylation, It's a flood.
Yeah, impossible for humans to parse alone.
Exactly. AI-driven platforms are really the only way researchers can possibly analyze and integrate these complex, interconnected data sets to find meaningful patterns and potential targets.
Indeed. AI is crucial for the heavy lifting, the sheer data crunching. For example, you mentioned AI was leveraged in that betaine exercise study we discussed earlier.
That's right. It was used to analyze the vast multi-omics data from kidney tissue during exercise and pinpoint that specific metabolite, betaine, as the key signaling factor being released.
Without AI, how long might that have taken?
Oh, potentially a decade or more of manual hypothesis testing, educated guesses, and painstaking experiments. AI found the signal in the noise much, much faster.
But it's more than just finding signals, right? AI is changing how aging itself is viewed.
Yes, more fundamentally, AI changes the way we can conceptualize and model aging. Aging is inherently complex, it's dynamic, it's definitely not a straight line down. AI allows scientists to integrate all these complex biomarkers, to treat aging not as some immutable fate, but as a dynamic, potentially reversible condition. It can model its progression and help identify the precise points of intervention in a way traditional linear statistical analysis simply couldn't handle.
So it's helping scientists find connections across species, maybe, and across different biological systems, recognizing patterns that might apply broadly.
Exactly. Recognizing cross-species patterns is key. It helps ensure that insights gleaned from, say, worm or mouse models translate better and faster to human physiology, reducing dead ends in research.
And that leads directly to the second major technological advance enabling this speed: measuring aging with precision. This is mainly through biological biomarkers and these sophisticated aging clocks.
Yes, the clocks are crucial. Everyone knows their chronological age, how many candles were on your last birthday cake. But the key metric in longevity science is biological age, how much wear and tear your cells and tissues have actually accumulated.
And our compiled sources highlighted the existence of cross-species DNA methylation clocks. This is fascinating to me. A single type of tool that allows scientists to reliably test any intervention, be it a drug, a supplement, or a gene therapy, across different mammals.
From mice to dogs to humans.
And quantify, often within weeks or months, whether the treatment actually reverses biological aging at a molecular level.
Let's make that mechanism a bit clearer for the listener, because methylation clock sounds abstract. Think of your DNA sequence, your genes, as the hardware of your computer. DNA methylation patterns are like the software. They're tiny chemical marks, tags, attached to the DNA that tell your body which genes to turn on or off, when to use them, and how strongly. They orchestrate gene expression.
And aging affects this software.
Yes, the aging process accumulates errors, noise, and damage in that methylation software. Genes get turned on when they shouldn't be, or off when they should be on. The DNA methylation clock reads the pattern of these accumulated marks across thousands of sites in your genome, providing a remarkably accurate measure of the true biological wear and tear.
And because these clocks work across species, the fundamental process is conservative researchers have a universal yardstick.
That's the power. You don't necessarily have to wait 20 years for lifespan data in humans, which is impractical for rapid brain development. You can wait maybe a few months to see if the intervention successfully winds back the biological clock in a verifiable quantitative way in a shorter-lived mammal, or even in human cells and culture, or in shorter human trials.
It speeds everything up.
Massively. Another great example mentioned was the AI-driven IH clock. This one specifically quantifies inflammaging by analyzing a specific panel of inflammatory markers in the blood.
Ah, that's the link back to the Urolithin A study we discussed earlier, right?
Exactly. Successfully lowering one's IH score, which Urolithin A demonstrably did in that human trial by reducing those key inflammatory cytokines like IL-6 and TNF-alpha, serves as a rapid, validated yardstick for confirming a true rejuvenation effect, specifically on the inflammatory component of aging.
So it's an efficient way to prove that an intervention is having the desired biological effect quickly.
Precisely. And looking even further ahead, or perhaps more toward accessibility, the sources even detailed the development of novel non-invasive monitoring techniques. Things like 3D facial imaging clocks.
Facial imaging, like taking a picture tells you your biological age.
Sort of, yes. It sounds a bit futuristic. But imagine a future where a simple high-resolution 3D photograph or scan could track your rejuvenation effects over time. These non-invasive tools are already being developed to detect subtle, accumulated aging cues in facial structure, skin elasticity, texture, pigmentation, even localized skin temperature patterns. AI algorithms correlate these features with biological age markers.
And the goal is?
They're being explored as a potentially scalable, cost-effective way to guide personalized anti-aging regimens outside of a full, expensive lab workup. It could greatly democratize the measurement side of things.
Interesting. So to summarize this toolkit section, these technological advancements, AI for analysis, sophisticated biomarkers and clocks for measurement, and digital health tools for monitoring, they allow scientists to move faster and with greater confidence than ever before.
Absolutely. This rapid translation from lab finding to potential therapy is essential, not just for the science, but because the ethical, policy, and economic questions surrounding longevity are moving just as quickly. The whole ecosystem needs to keep pace.
Okay, we're moving now to segment 4, the longevity equation. This is where we look at the critical policy, ethics, and economics that will ultimately determine whether these incredible scientific breakthroughs we've discussed ever actually reach global society in a meaningful way.
Right. This is where the rubber really meets the road, as they say. The science is exciting, but implementation is everything.
The first and absolutely non-negotiable roadblock discussed in the sources is safety and standardization.
Yes. Because these therapies, these geroprotectors, are often intended to target generally healthy individuals, people who might be symptom-free but are simply aging biologically, the safety imperative has to be exceptionally high, much higher, arguably, than for a drug targeting a catastrophic, life-threatening illness where risks are more easily balanced.
You can accept more side effects if the alternative is dying soon.
Exactly. For healthy aging individuals, the tolerance for adverse effects is and should be near zero.
It's encouraging, then, that the recent human trials we discussed, the D plus Q Senolytic pilot trial, the Urolithin A trial, the magnetic stimulation trial, all reported 0 serious adverse effects. That's a good sign.
It is. The research team noted that researchers seem to be proceeding cautiously, often starting trials in specific high-need groups first, like those ALS patients for Clotho, or the Frailty patients for laromestrocel, to meticulously establish safety profiles before considering broader populations.
But the primary hurdle isn't just demonstrating safety in trials, it's the fundamental regulatory structure itself, isn't it?
That's the big one. The entire pharmaceutical drug approval system, certainly in the U.S. with the FDA, but also globally, was established decades ago. And it's built entirely around approving drugs to treat a single, defined disease indication like high blood pressure or rheumatoid arthritis or a specific type of cancer.
And aging itself is not classified as a disease by the FDA or other major regulatory bodies.
Correct. It's seen as a natural process, even though it's the biggest risk factor for almost all diseases. This lack of a standardized regulatory pathway for drugs that target aging itself, the geroprotectors, rather than a specific downstream illness, is the single biggest impediment to major investment right now.
Why does that deter investment?
Because pharmaceutical companies are understandably hesitant to invest the billions, literally billions of dollars required for large-scale clinical development when they don't have a clear, predictable path to getting drug approved and subsequently reimbursed by insurance systems. The goalposts aren't defined for an anti-aging drug.
So this is why policymakers and advocacy groups are strongly urging the establishment of new mechanisms. Our sources mention something called the Advanced Approval Pathway for Longevity Therapeutics, or AAPLM.
Yes, the AAPLM proposal is gaining traction.
What exactly would the AAPLM change? It sounds like more than just a name change, right?
Oh, absolutely. The APLM proposal, which has significant policy backing from experts in the field, aims to fundamentally align economic incentives with these potentially transformative health improvements. It mirrors successful fast-track programs already in place for things like regenerative medicine or orphan drugs.
How would it work for aging?
Critically, it would establish a clear mechanism for the FDA to potentially approve drugs based on validated surrogate endpoints.
Surrogate endpoints.
Meaning things like verifiable biological age reversal markers, those DNA methylation clocks we talked about, or the age inflammation score, or maybe imaging markers of arterial health, instead of needing to wait 10 or 15 years to definitively prove that a drug prevented heart attacks in a massive population.
Which is incredibly expensive and slow.
They could potentially gain approval by proving it significantly reverses key validated aging biomarkers linked to heart attack risk within, say, a 1 or 2 year trial.
So you prove you're fixing the underlying mechanism faster.
Precisely. Approval based on these validated surrogate endpoints, potentially combined with other incentives like indication by indication patent term extensions for drugs that show broad anti-aging effects, would streamline development, It would offer a clearer market path for interventions targeting the underlying mechanisms of aging.
Making investment less risky and therefore more appealing for drug developers.
Exactly. It's about de-risking the process.
Now, moving from regulation to ethics, perhaps the most pressing ethical and access bottleneck is what we introduced right at the opening, the potential for a health span versus wealth span divide.
Yes. High-level policy forums and finance experts are already acknowledging this as a critical, looming crisis if we don't address it proactively.
The consensus seems clear among these experts. Complex, sophisticated, and likely initially expensive longevity interventions risk deepening existing societal wealth gaps. They could create what many sources have explicitly dubbed a biological caste system.
It's a stark term, but it captures the fear.
If the wealthy can afford to buy an extra decade, maybe two, of healthy, high-functioning life, while the general population is left with the traditional trajectory of chronic illness and decline, the economic and social consequences are potentially devastating. It goes far beyond just healthcare costs.
Absolutely. Think about productivity gaps, social unrest, intergenerational equity. It's huge.
So the mandate for researchers and developers is clear then.
It has to be.
Yep.
They must deliberately seek solutions that are not only effective, but also affordable and scalable. We see this philosophy, perhaps, driving some of the focus on accessible products like the Urolithin A, a supplement, or non-invasive devices like the magnetic Mitohormesis. These have the potential to become global goods rather than boutique cures available only to the elite.
But supplements alone won't solve the big problems like Alzheimer's or heart failure regeneration.
Likely not entirely, no. So policy solutions must also be explored urgently. Things like tiered pricing models for foundational geroprotectors once they're approved, or government mandates and funding for global access programs. We can't just hope the market solves this equity issue on its own. History suggests it won't without guidance.
Right. But perhaps the best argument for solving the accessibility problem and for funding this research broadly is purely economic. It's called the longevity dividend.
Yes, this is the massive financial rationale for dramatically increasing funding for geroscience research and creating supportive policy. It flips the script from cost to investment.
Let's try and quantify the staggering cost of not investing, of just waiting. The financial burden of age-related chronic diseases on the healthcare system is, well, astronomical.
It's almost unbelievable. Alzheimer's disease alone costs the U.S. economy about $360 billion annually right now. And that figure is projected to nearly triple, approaching $1 trillion a year by 2050 if we don't change the trajectory.
And that's just one disease.
Exactly. When you add in the costs of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, stroke, all heavily age-related, the total cost runs into the multi-trillions every single year. Crippling budgets.
So the longevity dividend provides the powerful return on that investment in geroscience.
Precisely. Estimates compiled by our research team show that delaying the onset of major age-related chronic diseases by adding just one single year of healthy health span to the average American could save the country anywhere from $7.1 trillion up to a staggering $38 trillion over the remainder of their potential lifetime.
$38 trillion from adding one healthy year. How is that possible?
That saving does not come solely from reduced Medicare and Medicaid spending on, treatments and hospital stays, although that's part of it. A large portion comes from increased economic productivity.
How so?
From a healthier, longer working population, or at least a population capable of working longer if they choose, and crucially, a population contributing to society and the economy for more years instead of requiring intensive care.
The value of a healthy year is higher than a sick year.
Dramatically higher. The economic analysis compiled by our research team valued 1 year of healthy life at approximately $242,000 in economic terms. That's more than double the estimated economic value of 1 year of life spent in declining health.
And where does that $242K figure come from?
It's derived from calculations involving fewer years spent needing assisted living, delaying the onset of debilitating chronic diseases that prevent work or require caregiving, and allowing highly skilled, experienced workers to contribute productively to the economy for longer. It's about quality-adjusted life years translated into economic value.
This compelling economic rationale seems to be fueling actual policy action, which is what we want to see.
Yes, thankfully. This includes serious calls to potentially triple the budget for the National Institute on Aging's Division of Aging Biology, which is the core government body funding basic geroscience research.
And focusing initiatives like ARPAH?
Exactly. Focusing initiatives like ARPAH, the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, which is designed for high-risk, high-reward projects, specifically on geroscience breakthroughs. And also, importantly, funding official congressional research to rigorously quantify that longevity dividend to make the economic case even stronger for policymakers.
So the policy goal, as put forward by influential groups mentioned in the sources, is clear.
It seems to be crystallizing to initiate a national movement, almost like a moonshot, setting actionable, time-bound goals. For example, a goal like increasing the average American's health span by 5 years by the year 2030.
That sounds ambitious, but maybe achievable based on the science.
It's ambitious, yes, but potentially achievable if the resources and regulatory pathways align. It provides a measurable, concrete objective fueled by the kind of science we've discussed today.
It really connects the dots from the lab bench to national policy. Okay, on that note, we love hearing your thoughts. Whether you're on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, leave a comment and let us know what you think about extending health span and these staggering economic impacts of the longevity dividend we just discussed. Does it change how you view aging research? Hashtag tag outro. So, as we synthesize the major themes from this week's Immortality update, our look at the cutting edge of longevity. What really stands out to me is this rapid, multifaceted progress. It feels like it's moving towards modifying aging itself, and it's being driven by this incredible technological precision.
I agree, and it's happening simultaneously in two powerful, distinct spheres, which is interesting.
How do you mean?
Well, on one hand, you have the highly accessible, potentially near-term gains. These are the proven supplements like Urolithin A that research shows can rapidly rejuvenate aspects of the immune system, or lifestyle mimetics like Betaine that might replicate some core exercise benefits.
Things people might access relatively soon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These could impact functional aging in the near term for millions of people, potentially slowing decline or improving resilience.
And then on the other hand,
Then you have the high-tech, truly transformative frontiers. The cellular therapies like Laromestrecel, which are showing major promise in late-stage trials for devastating conditions like frailty and Alzheimer's, and the precise gene therapies aiming for neuroprotection with Clotho, or even heart regeneration with Cyclin A2.
much bigger interventions, further out maybe, but with potentially huge impact.
Right. But the goal remains unified across all these diverse approaches.
Yeah.
Adding life to years, ensuring our later chapters are defined by vitality and function, not just by survival and degeneration.
Life to years, not just years to life. I like that.
And the future trajectory seems pretty clearly set now by the progress we're seeing in the clinical pipeline, and this gradual but definite shift in regulatory thinking towards aging itself. We're going to see the imminent transition of many of these therapies from mid-stage trials into pivotal human trials that could lead to approval.
Like which one specific?
Well, the planned single pivotal phase 23 trial for this stem cell therapy, Laromestrecel, for Alzheimer's is a huge one to watch. And the Clotho gene therapy aiming for clinical trials in ALS for neuroprotection is another example of these high-impact interventions moving from concept towards market viability much faster than we might have thought even 5 years ago.
It really does feel like a paradigm shift, where we move from viewing aging as this inevitable, unchangeable fate
To viewing it as a highly modifiable biological process and the primary risk factor for disease that we can actually target therapeutically.
And that leads us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you, our listeners, to consider as you wrap up this deep dive on Tomorrow Unveiled. The economic analysis we discussed clearly shows that the value, both personal and societal, of an additional healthy year of function far, far outweighs the financial drain of a sick, dependent one.
It's a stark contrast in value. So the question becomes, if the ability to scientifically delay your biological age by, say, 5 or even 10 years becomes common medical practice within this coming decade, which seems increasingly plausible,
And if that biological age delay correlates directly to your functional active years.
what profound implications does that have for your long-term retirement savings, your career planning, your relationships, your overall life expectations starting today?
Yeah, if you're a 45-year-old listening right now, you might traditionally be saving for maybe a 20 or 25-year retirement period.
But what if that needs to be a 35 or 40-year period of active retirement? Or maybe not even retirement in the traditional sense, but continued contribution or new careers.
Right. You might need to plan for a much longer period of activity and financial need, but potentially also with many more high-earning, high-contributing years added back into your potential lifespan before true decline sets in.
It changes the entire calculation of a life course.
Think about that as you plan your future, because the future of your health span, based on the science we're seeing, is arriving faster than you might think. We look forward to delving into new sources again next time here on Tomorrow Unveiled.